When a secret kept for generations begins to surface, only the courage of a lone animal can save those about to uncover the truth. The mist gently covered the mountains of rural Virginia. The river that snaked between the valleys seemed to guard ancient secrets in its turbulent waters. On that cold autumn morning, the silence of the landscape was broken by the roar of a powerful engine. A black Mercedes-Benz parked at the riverbank, raising a cloud of dust on the dirt road. Richard Sullivan stepped out of the car with firm steps. Tall, imposing, he wore an Italian suit that emphasized his authoritative figure. His dark eyes, usually calculating, hid an unusual restlessness. He looked around, making sure he was alone, before removing a small wicker basket from the back seat. Muffled sounds came from the basket. Two newborn babies, identical twins, squirmed uneasily. Richard looked at them with a mixture of coldness and hesitation. "You are a mistake I cannot afford to make," he murmured, placing the basket near the riverbank. "My reputation and my empire cannot be compromised." Without looking back, he returned to the car. The sound of the ignition mingled with the noise of the current as the Mercedes disappeared around the bend in the road. What Richard didn't notice was the silent presence that watched him. Among the dense vegetation, a mare with golden fur followed every movement with unusual attention. Luna, as she was known in the region, was renowned for her almost supernatural intelligence. When the car disappeared, she cautiously approached the riverbank. The basket was beginning to be swept away by the current. With surprising agility, Luna entered the water. Her strong hooves fought against the current as she reached the basket, pushing it with her muzzle to the safe shore. Carefully, she dragged it away from the water, as if she understood the preciousness of its contents. Not far from there, in a small wooden house surrounded by a flowering garden, Amy Reynolds watered her plants. At 35, her gentle face carried marks of silent sadness. Trained as a nurse, she had abandoned her career to live in the countryside with her husband, Mark, after years of frustrated attempts to have a child. "Amy, have you seen my hat?" Mark shouted from the porch, interrupting her thoughts. "It's hanging behind the door, as always," she replied with a patient smile. Mark Reynolds was a simple man, with hands calloused from working the land and a generous heart. He approached his wife and kissed her forehead. "I'm going to check the fence on the north side. I'll be back for lunch." Amy waved, watching her husband walk away. It was then that she noticed a strange movement near the river. Initially, she thought it was just the wind in the vegetation, but upon closer inspection, she recognized Luna's silhouette. The mare seemed agitated, moving in an unusual way. Intrigued, Amy headed toward the river. As she approached, she heard sounds that she couldn't completely identify. When she finally reached the bank, her heart nearly stopped. Luna was standing next to a wicker basket, and inside it— "My God!" exclaimed Amy, running to the basket. Two babies, no more than a few days old, were squirming restlessly, their thin clothes damp from the mist. Amy, with her nurse's experience, immediately assessed them. They were cold, but apparently well. "Where did you come from, little ones?" she murmured, looking around for some sign. Luna remained by her side, in an almost vigilant posture. Amy didn't hesitate. She took the basket in her arms and ran toward the house. "Mark! Mark!" she shouted desperately, as the first rays of sunlight finally broke through the mist, illuminating her path back home. Fate had placed an unexpected responsibility in her hands, and Amy knew, deep in her heart, that nothing would ever be the same again. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. Mark ran to meet Amy when he heard her desperate cries. When he saw his wife holding the basket with the babies, he froze, astonished. "What? Where did they come from?" he asked, approaching carefully. Amy, breathless, explained as she quickly entered the house. "Luna found them near the river. They're freezing and need urgent care." Without wasting time, Amy put water to heat while wrapping the babies in clean blankets. Her years of nursing training guided each movement with precision. Mark watched, divided between shock and a strange feeling of hope. "We need to alert the authorities," he said hesitantly. Amy nodded but couldn't take her eyes off the small faces. "First, Let's take care of them. They're dehydrated and cold. While preparing an improvised warm milk, Amy noticed a detail. Both babies wore identical small bracelets with an engraved symbol, a crescent moon intertwined with a star. She kept the information to herself, intrigued. In the following hours, the couple devoted themselves entirely to the newborns. Amy fed them with patience and love, while Mark improvised 2 small cribs with padded baskets. For the first time, in years, the Reynolds house seemed full of life. "They're so perfect," Amy murmured, watching them fall asleep. "How could anyone leave them like this?" Mark embraced his wife by the shoulders, equally enchanted. "Tomorrow we'll go to town. We need to report what happened." When night fell, Amy couldn't sleep. Sitting next to the improvised cribs, she observed every movement of the babies. At some point, one of them began to cry. Instinctively, Amy started to hum an old lullaby. To her surprise, the baby calmed down immediately, as if recognizing the melody. Outside, Luna remained vigilant. The mare, normally skittish, had not left the house, as if standing guard. Mark observed the unusual behavior of the animal through the window. "I've never seen Luna act like this," he commented. "It seems like she feels a connection with them." That same night, miles away, at the imposing Sullivan estate, Sarah was walking restlessly through the corridors. Richard's younger sister had just returned from a trip to Europe and felt that something was different in the atmosphere of the house. Richard was in his office, as always, but there was an unusual tension in his countenance when he received her. "How was the trip?" he asked distractedly, without taking his eyes off the documents. "Productive," answered Sarah, studying her brother. "I feel like I missed something important around here." Richard briefly raised his eyes. "Nothing beyond the usual. Business, commitments, the same routine." Sarah wasn't convinced. She knew her brother too well not to notice when he was hiding. "Something?" She decided to change the subject. "Any news about Elena?" she asked casually. The slight tremor in Richard's hand upon hearing that name didn't go unnoticed. "Why would you be looking for news about her? Elena disappeared months ago, you know that." Sarah nodded slowly. Elena Martinez had been a young and promising lyric singer who had mysteriously disappeared after a brief and intense romance with Richard. The Sullivan family had hushed up any possible scandal, but Sarah had always suspected there was more to that story. Just curiosity. She had so much talent. Richard rose abruptly, ending the conversation. "I'm tired. Tomorrow I have an important meeting in Richmond." When she was alone, Sarah walked to the window, looking out at the vastness of the Sullivan property. Something in her brother's behavior triggered an alert. In the last months of their acquaintance, Eleanor had confided to Sarah that she was expecting Richard's child, a revelation that the young Sullivan had never shared with anyone. "What did you do, Richard?" she whispered to herself, as the moon partially illuminated the impeccable gardens of the mansion. On the horizon, dark clouds announced a storm, both in the sky and in the hearts of those who, unknowingly, were connected by a secret that was beginning to emerge from the depths. A week passed since the twins arrived at the Reynolds house. Contrary to all initial expectations, Amy and Mark still hadn't sought the authorities. Each morning brought a new excuse. The bad weather, the need to wait for the babies to get stronger, isolation due to the rains. "We need to go to town today, Amy," Mark insisted as they had breakfast. "We can't just keep them." Amy looked at the babies who were sleeping peacefully in the improvised cribs. "Just one more day," she pleaded with tearful eyes. "I know it's not right, but I feel as if they were ours, Mark. As if, finally, our dream." Mark hugged his wife, understanding her dilemma. After years of trying to have children, fate had placed 2 perfect babies in their path. The temptation to consider this a miracle was too great. "What if someone is looking for them?" he questioned, although his voice betrayed his own internal conflict. Amy caressed her husband's face. What kind of person would leave 2 newborns at the edge of a river? It wasn't an accident, Mark. That afternoon, Amy bathed the babies while humming. Again, she noticed how they reacted to the music. Especially one of them, whom she had affectionately named Michael, seemed to go into a trance when she sang certain melodies. "You like music, don't you?" she whispered, smiling. "I think you inherited that from someone special." Meanwhile, at the Sullivan estate, Sarah was discreetly searching her brother's office. Richard had traveled to Richmond for 2 days, giving her the perfect opportunity to investigate her suspicions. In a locked drawer, she found what she was looking for, a small red-covered diary that she immediately recognized as belonging to Eleanor. She quickly flipped through the pages, her heart accelerating as she confirmed her suspicions. "Today I confirmed that I'm pregnant. Twins. Richard needs to know, but I'm afraid of his reaction. The Sullivan family would never accept a singer as part of them." The last entries dated from approximately 9 months ago. Elena described her growing fear, the veiled threats she began to receive, and her decision to hide until the birth of the babies. "Good heavens," murmured Sarah, feeling nauseous. "Richard, what have you done?" The sound of a car approaching made her hastily put away the diary. Through the window, she saw that it wasn't Richard, but Regina, the housekeeper, returning from shopping. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief and decided she needed to act quickly. That same day, she headed to the nearest town where Eleanor had performed for the last time. She talked with local residents, trying to discover any information about the disappeared singer. No one seemed to know much until an elderly lady mentioned something interesting. "The pretty girl who sang?" "Yes, she stayed at Mrs. Wilson's boarding house until she disappeared. They say she left in the middle of the night, carrying only a small suitcase." Sarah visited the boarding house, where she discovered that Eleanor had indeed been staying under a false name and had left abruptly. The owner remembered a mysterious visit on the night before her disappearance, a tall, well-dressed man who arrived in a luxury car. "So he had the accent of rich people," the lady commented. The next day she was in tears, packing to leave. The pieces were beginning to fit together, and Sarah felt a chill down her spine. She decided to expand her search, investigating hospitals and clinics in the region where Elena might have given birth. Back at the Reynolds farm, Mark had finally convinced Amy to go to town the next day. Both knew it was the right thing to do, even if their hearts desired otherwise. That night, as she was putting the babies to bed, Amy noticed something she hadn't noticed before. When removing the bracelet from one of them for the bath, she saw a small birthmark in the shape of a musical note on the baby's wrist. The other twin had an identical mark. "Mark, come see this," she called, intrigued. Mark examined the marks, equally surprised. "It looks like a musical note, doesn't it? What a strange coincidence." Amy felt a shiver. "Coincidence or destiny?" she murmured, as she replaced the bracelets with the symbol of the moon and star. Outside, Luna remained in her silent vigil, like a guardian of the secrets that those turbulent waters had brought, and that now were slowly beginning to emerge to the surface. The next morning dawned grey. Amy and Mark were getting the babies ready for the trip to town when a heavy storm broke out, making the dirt road practically impassable. "It's a sign," murmured Amy, cradling Michael, who had started crying with the noise of the thunder. "Maybe we should wait a little longer." Mark looked out the window, frustrated and relieved at the same time. "One more day, then. But tomorrow, without fail, we'll go to the sheriff's office." The involuntary delay gave Amy time to reflect. During the afternoon, while the babies slept, she found an old music box that had belonged to her grandmother. When she opened it, a soft melody filled the room. Immediately, both babies reacted. Michael opened his eyes, attentive, while Anthony, as they had named the second twin, moved his small arms as if conducting an invisible orchestra. "Mark, come see this," she called, amazed. The couple watched, fascinated, as the babies responded to the music with an unusual sensitivity for newborns. "It's almost as if they recognized the melody," Mark commented, intrigued. Amy remembered the birthmarks in the shape of a musical note and the bracelets with symbols. There was something there that she couldn't explain, a mysterious connection. That went beyond coincidence. At the Sullivan estate, Sarah was returning from her investigation when she found Richard in the main hall. He looked worn, with deep dark circles that betrayed sleepless nights. "You came back early from Richmond," she observed, studying her brother's reactions. Richard nodded distractedly. "The business was resolved more quickly than I expected." "I heard something interesting in town," Sarah commented casually. watching him carefully. "They say a wild mare rescued 2 abandoned babies near the river." The cup Richard was holding slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "What an absurd story," he replied, quickly recovering. "Country people and their superstitions." Sarah pretended to agree, but her brother's reaction confirmed her suspicions. "Anyway, I'm exhausted. I'm going to rest a bit." When she was alone in her room, Sarah mentally organized everything she had discovered. Through contacts at hospitals in the region, she had confirmed that Elena had given birth to twins just over 2 weeks ago, in a small remote clinic. The midwife who attended her clearly remembered the frightened young woman who had presented herself under a false name and hurriedly left after the birth. The babies were identical, beautiful, with an identical little birthmark on the wrist, the woman had said. "It looked like a little musical note. I thought it was cute." What most disturbed Sarah was Eleanor's disappearance. No one had heard from her since the birth. The babies had been found, but where was the mother? Determined to discover the truth, Sarah planned her next action. She needed to find the babies and who was caring for them. If the story of the mare was true, someone in the region should know more details. At the Reynolds farm, the storm had finally subsided. Amy was looking out the window when she noticed Luna approaching the house. The mare seemed agitated, neighing in an unusual way. "Something's wrong with her," Amy commented, concerned. Mark went out to check and realized that the animal seemed to want to lead them somewhere. Following his instinct, he decided to accompany her. "Sadi, I'll see what she wants to show us. I'll be right back." After a few minutes, Mark returned hurriedly, carrying something in his hands. "I found this near the place where we found the babies," he said, extending an object to Amy. It was a gold medallion with the same symbol engraved on the baby's bracelets, a crescent moon intertwined with a star. Inside was a small photograph of a young woman of extraordinary beauty. "My God," whispered Amy, recognizing the face. "It's Elena Martinez, the singer who disappeared. I saw her perform in town a few years ago." The couple looked at each other, understanding slowly forming in their minds. "These babies, are they her children?" questioned Mark, his voice almost a whisper. Amy felt a tightness in her heart. If the babies were Eleanor's children, who had abandoned them? And where was the mother? "We need to find out more before talking to the authorities," Amy decided, now driven not only by love for the babies, but also by the need to protect them. If someone abandoned them like that, they didn't simply want them to be found. They wanted them to disappear. The night slowly advanced, as an invisible web of destinies intertwined. At the Sullivan estate, Richard stared at the fireplace, tormented by ghosts that refused to stay submerged. At the Reynolds farm, Amy and Mark watched over the twins' sleep, now guardians of a mystery much larger than they imagined. And somewhere between these two realities, fate was preparing its next move on the board. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. 3 months passed. At the Reynolds farm, the twins grew strong and healthy, bringing a joy that Amy and Mark had never imagined experiencing. The trip to the sheriff's office never happened. After finding Eleanor's medallion, the couple made a silent decision. They would discover the truth before handing the babies over to a system that might not adequately protect them. "They look more and more like her," Amy commented one morning, observing the delicate features of Michael and Anthony, who now smiled and babbled happily. Mark agreed, caressing Anthony's chubby cheeks. "We need to go to town today. Supplies are running low and the boys need new clothes." Amy hesitated. Since finding the babies, they had avoided appearing together in town to avoid raising suspicions. But now that the twins were bigger, it would be more difficult to hide their existence. "Let's go together," she finally decided. It's time to face this. The small town of Pine Valley was the kind of place where everyone knew each other. When the Reynolds couple arrived with 2 identical babies, heads turned and whispers instantly began. "Are they your nephews?" asked Mrs. Thompson, the grocery store owner, unable to contain her curiosity. Amy and Mark exchanged a quick glance before Amy answered, "Actually, they're our sons. We adopted them a few months ago." It wasn't exactly a lie, Amy thought. In her heart, They were already her sons. While shopping, they didn't notice they were being observed. Sarah Sullivan, who had come to town to continue her investigation, was paralyzed when she spotted the babies. Even from a distance, she recognized features that resembled Eleanor mixed with unmistakable Sullivan family traits. "It's them," she whispered to herself, her heart racing. Discreetly, Sarah followed the couple around town, observing how they cared for the babies with love and devotion. When they stopped for lunch at a small diner, she took courage and approached. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Your sons are beautiful." Amy smiled, grateful, but something in the intense gaze of the elegant woman put her on alert. "Thank you. This is Michael, and this is Anthony." "Michael and Anthony," Sarah repeated, her voice breaking. "Strong names for strong boys." There was a moment of tense silence before Sarah continued. "Forgive my indiscretion, but do they have any birthmarks?" Amy's blood froze. How could this stranger know about the marks? Mark noticed her discomfort and intervened. "Excuse me, but who are you?" Sarah hesitated before answering. "My name is Sarah Sullivan, and I believe we have a lot to talk about regarding these babies." The Sullivan surname made Amy and Mark turn pale. Everyone in the region knew that powerful family and its current patriarch, Richard Sullivan, famous for both his enterprises and his ruthless temperament. "Not here," Amy murmured, looking around nervously. "Come to our house, but alone." Hours later, in the simple living room of the Reynolds farm, 3 adults spoke in hushed voices while the babies slept in the adjacent room. "Elena was my friend," Sarah explained, emotional. "She trusted me when she discovered she was pregnant. The babies are my brother Richard's sons." Amy and Mark listened, stunned, as Sarah revealed the secret romance between Richard and Elena, the unexpected pregnancy, and how the singer had mysteriously disappeared after confronting Richard. "I have reason to believe that my brother wasn't happy with the news," Sarah said carefully. "Richard has always been obsessed with control and the family's reputation. A scandal involving a singer and illegitimate children would be unacceptable to him. Are you suggesting that he—" Mark couldn't complete the sentence. "I don't know what happened to Elena," Sarah replied, her eyes watering, "but I found her diary. In the last pages, she mentioned fearing for her life and for the lives of the babies." Amy felt a wave of nausea. The image of the powerful Richard Sullivan abandoning his own children to their fate was too disturbing. "Luna," Mark suddenly murmured. "The mare that found the babies. She belongs to the Sullivan Ranch, doesn't she?" Sarah nodded, surprised. Luna was special to Elena. When she visited the ranch to secretly meet Richard, she would spend hours with that mare. They said the animal only calmed down when Elena sang to her. As if summoned by the conversation, Luna appeared at the living room window, her intelligent gaze fixed on the 3 humans. "It's as if she understands everything," Amy commented, shivering. "What will we do now?" asked Mark, concerned. "If Richard discovers the babies are with us?" "He already knows," interrupted Sarah. "I commented about babies rescued by a mare, and his reaction confirmed my suspicions. It's only a matter of time before he comes looking for them." Amy hugged herself, terrified at the possibility of losing the twins. "We can't let him find them, not after what he did." "I agree," said Sarah firmly. "That's why I came looking for you. We need to protect Michael and Anthony, and also find out what happened to Elena." As they talked, none of them noticed the silhouette of a black car passing slowly on the main road, nor the gleam of binoculars capturing every movement. In the small Reynolds farm, at Sullivan Estate, Richard paced back and forth in his office, his face contorted in a mask of contained fury. Before him, a man of discreet appearance waited, impassive. "Are you absolutely certain?" questioned Richard, his voice dangerously low. "Without a doubt, sir. Your sister visited the Reynolds couple this afternoon. The babies are with them." Richard poured himself a whiskey, his fingers trembling slightly. "And Sarah, what does she know?" "Impossible to determine, sir. But she has been visiting places associated with Ms. Martinez in recent weeks." Richard dismissed the informant with an abrupt gesture. When he was alone, he stared at his father's portrait on the wall, the Sullivan patriarch, known for his ruthlessness in business and in life. "I will not allow everything we've built to be destroyed," he murmured to the image, as if seeking approval. Miles away at the Reynolds farm, Sarah was helping Amy put the twins to sleep. The soft melody of the music box filled the room, provoking the now familiar reaction in the babies. Attentive eyes, little limbs moving to the rhythm of the music. "It's amazing," Sarah commented, moved. Elena had that same gift. She could understand music as if it were her own language. "The birthmark," Amy began. "They're hereditary in Elena's family," Sarah completed. "Her mother and grandmother had the same marks. They said it was the touch of the muses, a sign of exceptional musical talent." In the living room, Mark and Sarah discussed the next steps. "We need concrete evidence against Richard," Mark argued. "Without it, he can simply claim custody of the babies as their biological father." Sarah bit her lip, thoughtful. "There's something in Elena's diary. She mentioned documents she kept as insurance in case something happened. She didn't specify what they were, but said they were kept where the music never stops." "Where the music never stops?" Amy repeated, intrigued. "It sounds like a riddle." "The Grand Theatre," Sarah suddenly whispered. "Eleanor had a private dressing room there granted by the director who was her admirer. She called it her sanctuary, where music lived even after performances ended." Mark stood up, determined. "We need to go there. Tomorrow." "We can't all go," Amy considered. "Someone needs to stay with the babies." "I'll stay," Sarah offered. "Richard saw me in town today. If I disappear now, it will only raise his suspicions further." That night, while everyone slept, Luna let out a sharp neigh that woke Amy. She ran to the window and saw the mare in a state of agitation, looking insistently toward the main road. "Mark," she called in a low voice, shaking her husband. "Something's wrong." Mark joined her at the window in time to see headlights approaching slowly down the rural road, then turning off about 200 yards from the house. "Someone's coming," he whispered, feeling a chill. "Richard?" asked Amy, terrified. "Possibly. Get the babies, we'll go out the back. There's a trail that leads to the creek." Sarah woke up with the commotion, quickly understanding the situation. "Go to old Sebastian's cabin on the hillside," she whispered. "Nobody remembers that place. I'll deal with Richard." "But he's dangerous," Amy protested, cradling the sleepy twins. "He's my brother," Sarah replied firmly. "He'll listen to me." Mark hesitated before taking an old shotgun hanging on the wall. "Be careful," he warned, handing Sarah a small satellite phone. "If you need to, use this. It will work even out here." While Amy and Mark escaped through the back with the babies, Sarah positioned herself on the front porch, waiting. It wasn't. Long before two silhouettes emerged from the shadows, Richard and his driver, who also served as a bodyguard. "I imagined I'd find you here, little sister," Richard spoke with false cordiality, "always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." Sarah remained firm, blocking the entrance to the house. "What did you do with Elena, Richard?" His expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The babies, Richard. Your sons. You abandoned them to disappear." Richard laughed, a cold sound without humor. Always so melodramatic. "I just came to visit the Reynolds couple. I heard they recently adopted. As a prominent member of the community, I want to offer my support." "In the middle of the night?" Sarah questioned ironically. "Spare me your lies." Richard took a step forward, threatening. "Where are they, Sarah? I know you're hiding the children." "Why? So you can try to get rid of them again?" Richard's mask of civility fell. "Those bastards could destroy everything. The inheritance, the reputation, the government contracts. You know how these scandals work." "So you confess?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. She hadn't expected him to give himself away so easily. Richard seemed to realize his mistake, stepping back. "I confess nothing. I just want to meet my sons, if they truly are mine." "And Elena, do you also want to meet her again?" Something dark crossed Richard's gaze. "Eleanor made her choice when she threatened to expose me. The consequences are hers." A sudden noise in the stable attracted everyone's attention. Luna had come out, positioning herself beside Sarah like a silent guardian. Richard paled upon recognizing the animal. That mare shouldn't be here. She came to protect what you tried to destroy, Sarah challenged. Just like me. For a moment, silence hung heavily between the siblings. Then Richard took a step back. This isn't over, Sarah. I'll be back and with the police. After all, kidnapping is a crime. So is attempted murder, she retorted. Think carefully about your next move. When Richard finally left, Sarah collapsed in the porch chair, trembling. Luna approached, resting her head on her shoulder as if offering comfort. We need to find Elena, Sarah whispered to the mayor. She's the only one who can end this once and for all. The Grand Theatre in town seemed even more imposing in the morning twilight. Mark observed the neoclassical facade while waiting for the arrival of the caretaker, an old acquaintance who had promised to let him in before the official opening hours. This is madness, he murmured to himself, thinking of Amy and the twins hidden in old Sebastian's isolated cabin. After the confrontation with Richard, Sarah had insisted that he proceed with the original plan, to find the evidence that Elena had possibly left in the theatre. Meanwhile, she would remain close to the cabin, watching for any suspicious movement. "Mark, it's been a long time," exclaimed Gerald, the grey-haired caretaker, approaching with a bundle of keys. "Thank you for receiving me so early, Gerald." Mark shook his calloused hand. "Anything for the Reynolds family. Your grandmother cared for my wife when no one else could help." Mark nodded, grateful for the discretion of the man who had not asked questions about his unusual request. "I need to see Elena Martinez's old dressing room." The singer's name made Gerald furrow his brow. Sad story, so talented, disappeared like smoke. Walking through the empty corridors, the caretaker explained, "We've kept her dressing room intact. The director believes she'll return someday. She was like a daughter to him." When they reached the door with a golden star that read Elena Martinez, Mark felt a lump in his throat. The life of the woman who had given birth to Michael and Anthony had been abruptly interrupted, possibly by the father of her own children. "Should I take the keys when I leave?" asked Gerald. "If possible, I'd like some time alone." The caretaker agreed, discreetly moving away. "I'll be in the main lobby if you need me." Inside the dressing room, time seemed to have frozen. Perfumes, makeup, and sheet music remained exactly as Elena had left them. Photos of the singer on various stages decorated the walls. Her radiant smile, the expressive eyes that Mark recognized in the twins. "Where would you hide important documents?" he murmured, carefully observing every corner of the room. The words from the diary echoed in his mind. "Kept where the music never stops." He looked at the piano in the corner of the dressing room, slowly approaching it. He examined the instrument, lifted the lid, checked under the bench, but found nothing. Frustrated, he reclined in the velvet armchair where Elena certainly rested between performances. That's when he noticed a music box identical to the one Amy had at home on the dressing table. With trembling hands, he picked up the object. Turning it over, he realized that the bottom was loose, unlike the conventional model. Carefully removing it, he found a secret compartment containing a sealed envelope and a flash drive. "Found it," he whispered, his heart racing. In the isolated cabin, Amy was cradling the twins who were restlessly squirming in the improvised crib. "Shh! Everything's fine," she murmured, though she didn't fully believe it herself. Sarah entered silently, bringing supplies. "Any news from Mark?" asked Amy, anxious. "Not yet, but don't worry. He knows how to take care of himself." Sarah observed the babies, amazed at how much they resembled Elena, the same expressive eyes, the same face shape. "Richard won't give up easily," she commented, looking out the window. "He's always been obsessed with control. Our father raised him that way, to be ruthless." "How can he want to harm his own children?" asked Amy, indignant. Sarah sighed heavily. "For Richard, the Sullivan family is greater than any individual. It's a legacy, an empire. If Elena publicly spoke about the paternity of the twins, various government contracts would be affected. There are moral clauses involved, businesses worth millions." "Money," Amy murmured with disdain. "All for money." "And power," added Sarah. "Richard became who our father wanted him to be. I was spared that pressure for being a woman. Ironically, the family's sexism saved me from becoming like him." A distant neigh made both turn around. Luna was approaching the cabin at an accelerated gallop, something unusual for the normally calm mare. "Something's wrong," Sarah ran outside. Luna seemed agitated, moving nervously from side to side. "Does she want us to follow her?" asked Amy, confused. "I think so," replied Sarah, already preparing to mount. "Stay with the babies, I'll check." Following Luna through the forest trail, Sarah spotted in the distance Richard's SUV parked near the main road. Armed men methodically searched the woods. "He found us," she murmured, freezing inside. She returned to the cabin at full speed, alarming Amy with her expression. "We need to leave here now. Richard and his men are close." Amy turned pale, hugging the twins against her chest. "Where will we go?" Sarah thought quickly. "I know a place. My grandmother's old summer house. No one in the family has been there for decades." As they hurriedly prepared to leave, the satellite phone rang. It was Mark. "I found it, Amy." His voice sounded exultant, even over the phone. "Documents, videos, everything we need to incriminate Richard." "Mark, Richard found us," interrupted. Amy, desperate. "We're leaving now." There was a moment of tense silence before Mark responded. "Meet me at the place where it all began. You know where." Amy understood immediately. "The riverbank, where Luna found the babies." "Exactly. I'll be there in 2 hours." Hanging up the phone, Amy looked at Sarah. "We have to get to the river before Richard." Sarah nodded, determined. "Don't worry. I know these woods better than any of Richard's men. I grew up exploring them." As they prepared to leave through the back of the cabin, Luna positioned herself before them as if offering help. Sarah hesitated only a moment. "Can you carry one of us?" she asked, looking into the intelligent eyes of the animal. As if responding, Luna lowered herself slightly, facilitating access to her back. "Take Amy and one of the babies," Sarah decided. "I'll go on foot with the other. We'll meet at the river." Amy looked at Sarah, hesitant. "What if we get separated?" "Don't worry," replied Sarah, helping her mount with Michael in her arms. "Luna knows the way. And remember, we're about to rewrite the destiny of all of us. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. The sun was beginning to set when Amy arrived at the riverbank, mounted on Luna. Michael slept peacefully in her arms, exhausted from the journey. The place seemed different under the golden light of dusk, more serene, almost magical, as if time had softened the tragedy that had occurred there months before. "We've arrived," she whispered to Luna, carefully dismounting. Amy looked around. Anxious, there was no sign of Mark or Sarah with Anthony. She sat on a flat rock, cradling Michael while she waited. Luna remained vigilant, her ears attentive to any sound in the surrounding forest. "They'll come," Amy murmured, more to herself than to the sleeping baby. "We have to believe." The sound of breaking branches startled her. Luna turned sharply toward the direction of the noise, but relaxed almost immediately. Seconds later, Mark emerged from among the trees, breathless and with an envelope pressed against his chest. "Amy!" he exclaimed, running to embrace his wife. "And son. Thank God you're all right." "Sarah?" asked Amy, looking behind him. Mark shook his head. "I haven't seen her. I thought she would be with you." A tense silence hung between them. The absence of Sarah and Anthony was disturbing. "She knows these woods," said Amy, trying to remain optimistic. "And Luna would guide her if necessary." Mark nodded, although his expression remained concerned. Opening the envelope, he spread its contents on the rock. "What Elena left is devastating for Richard," he explained. "There are records of threats, suspicious financial transfers, and—" Before he could continue, Luna let out a loud neigh and ran to the opposite bank of the river. Amy and Mark followed her gaze and saw Sarah emerging from the vegetation carrying Anthony. "You made it!" exclaimed Amy, relieved. Sarah crossed the river at its shallowest part, reaching them with water up to her knees. "Richard is close," she warned, breathless. "His men followed me for a while, but I managed to lose them." Mark quickly gathered the documents. "I found everything in the dressing room. Elena documented every threat, every attempt by Richard to silence her." Sarah examined the material, her face paling as she recognized her friend's handwriting. "There's more," said Mark, showing the flash drive. "Videos. Elena secretly recorded her conversations with Richard." "That explains why he was so desperate," Sarah murmured. With this evidence, Richard would be ruined. Amy, who was carefully observing the forest, touched Mark's arm. "Someone's coming." They all turned in the direction Amy indicated. Luna positioned herself protectively in front of the babies, her eyes fixed on the shadows among the trees. "Get ready to run," Mark whispered. But it wasn't Richard who emerged from the vegetation. A female figure, fragile and hesitant, took a few steps toward them. Her hair was shorter, and she was thinner than in the photographs, but there was no doubt it was Elena Martinez. "Holy Mother!" exclaimed Amy, incredulous. Luna was the first to react, running to the newcomer with a neigh that seemed of joy. Eleanor caressed the mare with familiarity, silent tears running down her face. "You protected them as I promised," she whispered to the animal. Sarah advanced in a state of shock. "Eleanor? How? We thought you—" Eleanor smiled sadly. "That's what Richard wanted everyone to think. After I gave birth, he kept me isolated in a psychiatric clinic in another state, under a false name. He said I suffered from delusions, that I had never been pregnant." She looked at the babies in Amy and Mark's arms, her eyes filling with tears. "My sons, they're so big." Amy approached slowly, extending Michael toward his biological mother. "They're beautiful and healthy. Michael and Anthony." Eleanor took the baby with trembling hands, a sob escaping her throat. "Michael was my grandfather's," she said, emotional, "and Anthony was my first music teacher." Sarah, still astonished, asked, "How did you escape? How did you find us?" "The night nurse. She was suspicious of my story, helped me escape. As for finding you, Luna." Everyone looked at the mare, who remained by Elena's side like a guardian. "We always had a special connection," Eleanor explained. "In the clinic, I dreamed of her every night, saw through her eyes. I knew she had found my sons, knew they were safe. When I escaped, I simply followed that connection." The story sounded fantastic, but no one doubted it. After all they had witnessed, a mystical connection between Eleanor and Luna seemed perfectly plausible. "Richard is looking for all of us right now," Mark warned. "We need to get out of here." The sound of engines in the distance confirmed his words. Elena paled, pressing Michael against her chest. "He'll never give up," she murmured. "This time, he has no choice," Sarah replied firmly, holding the envelope with the evidence. "The empire he so protects will be destroyed if he harms us." As if responding to her words, headlights illuminated the riverbank. Richard Sullivan appeared, followed by two men. His face contorted when he saw Elena. "Impossible," he murmured, pale as a ghost. Elena raised her chin, defiant despite her fear. "Surprised to see me, Richard? Not even you can imprison someone forever." Richard took a step forward, but stopped when he saw Sarah raise the envelope. "It's over, brother," she declared. "One false move, and this evidence goes to the authorities, the press, all your business enemies." "What evidence?" Richard scoffed, but his voice betrayed uncertainty. "Everything, Richard," replied Elena. "I recorded every threat, every confession, even that last night, when you said you would get rid of the babies and me if I didn't disappear." Richard looked at the twins, his sons, and for an instant something resembling remorse crossed his countenance. "I never intended to hurt them," he murmured. "I just wanted them to disappear from my world." "There's your confession," said Mark, revealing that he was recording the conversation on his phone. "Now get out of our way." Richard faltered, his eyes moving between the babies, Elena, and the evidence in Sarah's hands. Finally, he gestured for his men to retreat. "This isn't over," he threatened. "On the contrary," Sarah retorted. "It's just beginning. A new beginning for all of us, including you, Richard. Without lies, without crimes." When Richard and his men finally left, a surreal silence took hold of the group at the riverbank. Amy was the first to break it. "What happens now?" she asked, looking at Elena with the twins. The question hung in the air, heavy with possibilities and uncertainties. Elena looked at Amy and Mark, then at her sons. "You are their parents," she said softly. "You cared for them, loved them when I couldn't. That will never change." Amy felt tears welling in her eyes. "But you're their mother, the real one." Elena shook her head, interrupting her. "Motherhood goes beyond blood. You proved that." Sarah, always practical, suggested, "Maybe we don't need to choose. There's enough room for everyone in this family." The words resonated like a revelation. Mark looked at Amy, then at Eleanor and the babies. "A family?" he repeated, testing the word. "Different, complex, but a family." Elena smiled, the first genuine expression of happiness on her face. "I can go back to singing, be present in their lives, but without taking away from you what you've built." Amy walked to her, embracing her carefully so as not to crush Michael. "The boys deserve to know music through you," she said sincerely. "And I think we all deserve a fresh start." Sarah approached, joining the embrace. "I'll keep Richard away. With this evidence, he'll have no choice but to back down and accept the terms we establish." Luna softly neighed as if approving the plan. Mark laughed, patting the animal's neck. "Don't forget the true heroine of this story," he commented. "Without Luna, none of this would be possible." As the group made their way to the Reynolds house, the last light of day illuminated their faces with a golden glow of hope. The mayor followed alongside them, vigilant as always. In Elena and Amy's arms, the twins slept peacefully, their small lips curved in identical smiles, as if dreaming of the music that had always been part of their lives, even before they were born. The river continued its eternal course, a silent witness to how a near-consummated tragedy had transformed into a symphony of new beginnings, an unlikely melody, composed of notes of courage, love, and redemption that would continue to echo for generations.